Hello everybody, welcome to the Daily Sip. My name is Oliver and my mission is to bring you closer to organic Japanese green tea, and today we're gonna dive into a next session of our 28 pack mega sample experience. And today what we're gonna dive into is we're gonna take a look at the Issin Kamairicha organic green tea from Takachiho. So this tea actually is coming from the very south of Japan, on the island of Kyushu, and we're gonna open this one here. But before we're gonna dive into, we actually have a look at what's the difference of sencha green tea or normal green tea versus the Kamairicha.
This is the Kamairicha Issin. It's made by this guy, Mr. Issin. Mr. Issin is hard at work up in the mountains of southern Japan, crafting beautiful pan-fired green teas like this one. While most Japanese green teas are steamed after harvesting, Kamairicha is pan-fried, giving it some warmer notes of caramel or chocolate. Mr. Issin lives here in Takachiho with his family in their 200-year-old home. Mr. Issin is always exploring new types of tea to share with his family and people all across the world. He is strongly committed to growing organic green tea and even makes his own organic fertilizer out of leftover compost.
So as you can see, Mr. Issin and his family are actually living still all together in a small tea house, or their small house, and actually this tea is a specialty or on which Mr. Issin is actually specializing on the roasted green tea. And roasted green tea are teas which are not only steamed after the harvest, but they are also then a little bit roasted. And here we're talking about the Kamairicha, so the slightly roasted version. So when we look at the tea leaves, when we just have a broader look at them, so you can see these tea leaves actually are beautifully rolled, and they have a slightly darker, a little bit more going in the direction of brown, golden brown. So still very green leaves, but also on the way to become more brown. And if you leave these teas longer in, then actually you're gonna arrive on the level of hojija, and the hojija, or the roasted green tea, is also a typical tea which expanded around the 1920s around Kyoto, but now you can drink it in several restaurants already, because it is quite a common tea also to have with a meal. But when we have a look a little bit into this tea, so here we talk about Kamairicha. Kamairicha is actually a tea which also bases on the old tradition of how you do green tea in China, because often when you have Chinese tea, you often take a tea which is pan-fried. So this tea, actually pan-fried tea, and slightly roasted. So here we talk only about 100 degrees 1 hour instead of over a longer time period at 140 degrees Celsius. When we dive into the tea, so how this tea is constituted, so let's have a look a little bit at the varietals. So here we also talk about the blend. So it's a tea which is mixed together from different blends, from different tea varietals, coming here from the Kanaya Midori. Then we have the Yabukita and we have the Sai Midori. All these three teas, especially the Kanaya Midori and the Sai Midori, are quite sweet, maybe a little bit softer teas. So the tea is expected to be a little bit softer, a little bit sweeter. When we talk about Sai Midori, so the first one, there we know it is a crossbreed actually of Yabukita and Asatsuyu, being quite a umami-rich tea thanks to the high amount of L-theanine or of amino acids in this tea. Then second one, the Kanaya Midori, is when you take it just alone and it is pan-fired, then the tea in its sencha version can be nearly a little bit milky, quite sweet, nearly a little bit sugary. So and it's also a little bit of a softer, a little bit more of a delicate tea, you might say. And third one, we have the Yabukita. Yabukita, quite a known tea, having a very broad taste spectrum. But thanks to the first two teas, here we are dominating more, a little bit more in the sweeter, a little bit more finer, a little bit more smooth around. So we will not experience too much astringency, but I'm curious now to dive a little bit into this tea and see how the taste of this tea is. It is also a slightly shaded tea before harvest, but in general, as it is pan-fired, so this is also taking over the main aspects of the tea, making it also a little bit sweeter sometimes when you go with a hojicha. For example, our Noiko hojicha is quite caramelly, quite sweet, but here I expect it to have a little bit of a cereally and a little bit of a sweet tone to it without going too much into a caramel or a chocolate note. But let's see how this tea is tasting. So what I will do is actually that I will just pour it into the Kyusu. So you take the 5 grams, you let them sit for 1 minute, and then we're just gonna brew this tea. Good. So we brewed this tea now for around 1 minute, and we brewed it at 70 degrees Celsius, so which is around 165 Fahrenheit. So this is the temperature I used for this tea. And straight away you can see this is not a typical green tea, so it goes directly into a kind of a more golden, beautiful color thanks to the roasting. Normally, if you take a Kanaya Midori and a Sai Midori and the Yabukita, then you definitely will have quite a strong green or green and golden color. But here we can see this is a typical golden, dark golden color even. So not drifting off into the green. When we have a smell at the tea leaves, freshly brewed, so we get a lot of this kind of toasted flavor, but not as strong in this kind of coffee or chocolatey notes, or even nearly a little bit burnt, which you might have when you use or when you drink hojicha. Here we have nearly a little bit of a popcorn flavor. So it's much sweeter, much softer. And I'm curious to go into the tasting of the tea. So when we have a sip of this one. I got a lot of a corn flavor profile. So when you're drinking a tea which has a lot of umami, I often get there a little bit of a corn flavor. But it is kind of supported by more of a marine note, more of a kind of this umami, nearly seaweedy, wakame notes which you can get. Here it's much more, there is a slight sweet note of this sweet corn note, but without drifting off into a little bit this marine note. So it really stays more in this realm of this nice sweet corn note, and then adding in a little bit of more nutty, so I get a little bit of hazelnut, I get a little bit of almondy taste notes. So that's quite impressive when you drink a slightly roasted tea. So it never kind of drifts off too much in this caramel chocolatey notes, doesn't drift off into caramel notes, but it goes away from this a little bit sweet corn notes and mixed with the marine notes. So the marine notes or the seaweed notes, they completely go out of this tea and bring the tea in the territory of hazelnut, of almond. So this is the direction this tea goes definitely in this very first brewing now. When we go to the second brewing, so here, as I said before, we left it 1 minute in. In the second brewing, it's very important that you leave the tea leaves not too long, so just 20 seconds, that's more than enough. So I think I already brewed this enough, so we can take the second brewing. And we still stay in this beautiful golden color with this tea. So very, very nice in terms of color. This kind of it's not a too strong color profile, so sometimes you can get quite a strong darker color. Also sometimes with the sencha it can be a little bit milky, but here we see we are very, very clear, very beautiful kind of this golden nuance of this tea, but without being kind of too color strong. But the taste is very, very, very complex. It is nice. It's not too overwhelming, but still quite a strong flavor profile with this tea. Now let's see in the second brewing. Still the nutty flavor, sweetness. So we get, you don't get this sugary, but you get a little bit of this banana peel sweetness, but not too strong. So slight sweetness, sweet corn, and still this hazelnut and almondy flavor profile is definitely present. And what is nice about this tea is that it stays from the first to the second brewing really similar. There are some teas they can change quite strongly in their taste notes. For example, when you take a deep steam tea, there in the first note you get a lot of sweetness, in the second note you get a lot of spinachy. Here what is interesting about this tea is that you have a really stable flavor profile, really around this sweet corn, around this hazelnut and almondy flavor profile. With this tea you can also go to around 2 to 3 brewings. You can even do a fourth one with it, but 3 stable brewings I would assume this tea can definitely give you. So quite an interesting tea also to dive into a little bit into the world of the roasted tea. If you but want to go for the straight, strong roasted and a little bit kind of this more chocolatey and coffee flavor profile, then go for the Hojicha. And if you want to then after the Hojicha have something smoother, a little bit more nutty, then definitely you can try the Kamairicha. So I hope you like this one too, and never forget, if you ever have a question, please write us, leave us a comment, or reach us out through social media. Thanks a lot for watching. See you and bye bye.